Hey everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Morgan. If there's one thing that I really love, and I love to talk about things that I love, it is sparkling water. I love sparkling water. I don't like traditional soda. I don't like high calorie juices. I'm pretty careful about what I drink, what my family drinks. And one of the products I've picked up is Spindrift. I love Spindrift. Today we have a really fun guest because we have the founder of Spindrift Beverage Company on the show, Bill Creelman. He serves as the CEO, and prior to that, he co-founded Stirrings, which was sold to Diageo in 2009. Spindrift is made up of over 100 passionate employees dedicated to changing the sparkling beverage industry. Spindrift is leading beverage into a new age of innovation, transparency, and ingredient simplicity. I love that. By offering a product with no artificial sweeteners, no natural flavorings, no essences. All that stuff is always very vague, right? Like flavored with natural essences, or like, what does that even mean? Spindrift was named to Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies. It's a 2-time recipient of BevNet's Product of the Year. It was featured on NPR's How I Built This in 2020. Bill and I are going to talk about the start of the company, Spindrift's loyal drifter community. We're going to talk about Spindrift Spiked. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get to see me drink some of these soda products. Can't wait for that. Anyway, I know you'll enjoy this episode. Let's get to it. All right, Bill, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. Where are you calling in from today?
We are coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts.
All right, yeah. That is a little colder than where I am in LA. Have you always lived in Boston?
I grew up in Massachusetts, so yes, I grew up in the western part of the state, though. Very different, very much more agricultural, a lot more open space. So it's taken me a little while to adjust to city life, but I love it here.
Well, awesome. So our audience, I'm sure they have tried your drink or have heard of your drink, but I want to go back to, you'll tell us exactly how many years ago, but quite a few years ago when you got into the industry you're in now. Can you give us the high level, Bill, story of how you got started doing what you're doing now?
Sure. Well, Spindrift was kind of a natural evolution. I mentioned Western Massachusetts. So I grew up on a farm out in Western Massachusetts, and I worked in the fishing industry for a little while. but really more than that, I just love food. I love the food industry. I like cooking. I like ingredients. I was lucky to be exposed to a lot of interesting places that had ingredients that were local, and so I got to see how things are grown or helped catch them in the ocean. And so Spindrift came from my Diet Coke drinking habit that I developed, as well as my interest in local food. And what was happening, to take you back, I guess 13 years ago, was soda was starting to go away. People were thinking more and more about, why they were drinking so much soda. Taxes were getting levied on sodas. And I was looking for a solution that was fit more of my lifestyle. And when you looked at the landscape then, there really was nothing that was made with any ingredients that I really related to or recognized. There's a lot of concentrates, a lot of syrups, a lot of flavor systems. And so we just started fresh squeezing. We started squeezing lemons, oranges, grapefruits. And that really was the genesis of Spindrift. Basically 13 years ago.
So was it something that you knew you wanted to innovate? Were you looking for a product to bring to market, or were you just having fun trying to mess around in your kitchen and just find a drink that had the fizz of diet soda, but none of the chemicals?
I'd say a combination of both. So I had been in the business for a while with a kind of a different proposition a different beverage. It was more of a non-alc mixer. But I think, great innovation almost always has to come from a place of passion where you really care about what you're doing. And I just was really, I was really interested in this idea that soda was this great American pastime, something we all love, we all grew up with. And it just seemed crazy to me that it was going away. There had to be a way to do it, a way to do it better that was more befitting of people's lifestyles. It's 100-year-old category. There's no way it's not going to evolve over time. And that was really the starting point. What made sense to me was not some technology solve or some, snappy, kind of new take on a flavor. It really was the idea of I love fresh squeezing, putting it in a cocktail. I love just fresh ingredients in my food. Why can't fresh ingredients have a role in sparkling beverages? It just seemed way too intuitive to me, and that was really kind of the genesis.
Well, I think it's a delicious product. I love the grapefruit flavor of Spindrift. I've been drinking it for quite a while. Talk about your customer base and getting to know your customer. The most customer-centric companies, which is what we talk about on this podcast, are often started by founder CEOs that just care. They're so passionate. They want to know the customer. They want to talk to the customer. Can you just talk about what type of leader you are and if you would consider yourself customer-centric?
You were catching me behind sort of a desk today, but even 12 or 13 years later, I try to get out into the world in front of customers as much as I'm behind the desk. So it is in our DNA. When we entered the space, this huge category with a very differentiated proposition, I was so consumed with what I call the white hot center, which is where is that customer that cares about real ingredients, that is willing to try something other than the soda they were used to or the sparkling water they were used to. So I actually ran the business from my house for 2 years. And all I did was drive up and down kind of from Boston to New Hampshire to Vermont and then eventually out to the West Coast and just listened to what customers had to say about their sparkling drinking. And what we found out is people love sparkling beverages. I mean, it just gets someone started on their favorite, sparkling drink. Maybe it's a soda from where they grew up. They're nostalgic. They used to have it with their dad watching a ball game or their mom when they were on vacation or sitting, on the beach somewhere. So we knew we were cooking with fire. I mean, this is a really passionate part of people's lives, but they also were, really not happy with what the offerings were. So we turned that excitement into what we call our drifter community, Blake. So we have completely gone kind of in the opposite direction of sodas. We don't do any traditional marketing, and all we do is work with our consumer, our customers, to help share their passion for sparkling beverages, help share their passion for Spindrift, get them excited, embrace them, and then have them go out into the world and tell our story alongside us. So I would say we are the very sort of definition of, really embracing, listening. We bring them into our flavor ideas. We often ask them to taste the products. We are consumed with hearing back from them and encouraging surveys and feedback constantly. I don't know. It was interesting. I've been now in this business for 20 plus years. You never really had direct access to consumers, to customers until I would say the last 10 years. And since you now can have that one-on-one relationship, I don't see a time when we will ever turn back to what I would characterize as more kind of arm's length discussions.
Yeah, and traditionally when you sell products to grocery stores, you really never see your customer because you're selling through a third party. So that can be challenging, but now it's much easier to be direct to the consumer. and to collect data. Is that something that you are personally involved with, collection of data, so you can kind of see what the behavior is of your customer base?
Yeah, I'm not in an invasive way. I would say the way we do it, we are incredibly measureful. So we kind of measure everything, but it's much more about um, trying to understand why people are getting out of sodas, what their instincts are. Are they gravitating towards certain call outs on the ingredient panel, certain flavors? Are they shopping differently? We really like the idea of a consumer circle. So people come in, they try the brand, they become interested in it, they join up with one of our community kind of membership areas, social media or email or Amazon, and then we kind of create a virtuous circle where they talk about the brand and come back together. So I would say it's more of a collaborative approach to information sharing that's really worked for us so far.
That's interesting. I never heard of that before. The circle or the cycle. Was it circle or cycle?
Virtuous cycle. So this
Virtuous
idea
cycle.
that if people have a good experience with the brand, they're going to go tell other folks about it. And so we really view our job as helping them get to know us better to a point where they have enough information to then pass along, the gospel of Spindrift to other people that are looking to solve their soda or sparkling water habits.
So I read that you have a team of about 100 people, Bill, and I would love to know, what does customer-centric leadership look like for you with that medium-sized team and yourself being so involved with the product and the customers? What does customer-centric leadership look like that perhaps our listeners that want to be more customer-centric and they are leaders, what can they learn from you?
I think we're all on this journey together, trying to, again, migrate this huge group of soda and or, beer drinkers in the case of our Spindrift Spike product over to a healthier, better option. So the only way I know how to do that is to really bring our whole team into the process. So we're extremely collaborative. There's no job too big or small, for us to take on. We share a lot of information together. We have an offsite together. We have tons of channels, and really at the very heart of it, it's finding really smart people that are passionate about what they're doing and kind of getting out of the way and letting them really letting their creativity and their experience shine through. So I view my job more than anything as kind of removing obstacles so that the best ideas can bubble to the top. And I guess, in the same way that we're so transparent with our consumer, we try to have that same approach with our team. I think it's so important to sort of, in order to take down these big, long held traditions like soda and beer, you really have to have everyone, rowing in the same direction. And so that really, I would say, is how I think about leadership.
Right. The beverage category is really, really competitive. It's very, very hard to break in to get a spot on the shelf of the grocery store. It's super, super cutthroat. So, how do you maintain a nice culture, an empathetic culture, a supportive culture of the employees while also being competitive and performing at the level that is necessary to keep your spot on that shelf and in the eye of the consumer?
Well, we have an amazing team. I mean, we have a we have a big field sales team that does an incredible job for us. But I really think it comes back to this concept that all of our team is sort of moving towards the same ambition. You have to be a little crazy to say, oh, we're going to take on these brands that have been in business for, our youngest competitor was 30 years old when we started. There's 100 and some odd sparkling water brands. There's hundreds of spiked hard sparkling water brands. So And I think that really brings the team together because we have such an important point of difference. Every other brand uses natural flavors or synthetic flavors, and we use real ingredients. It really brings the team together. And we're really almost like a mission-led brand. We don't think about what we do every day as selling sparkling water. We really think about it as converting people that may not be aware that there's an alternative brand out there into something that's new and different. It has color, it has a little pulp, it really tells you what it is instead of, what it, kind of more of a flavor system. And I think through that, those kind of hard fought battles, it really has created this wonderful chemistry among the team.
When I was looking at the product, because you sent me some of the product, thank you so much. When I was looking at it, I was looking at the
Yeah.
ingredients, and so the ingredients in this Spindrift Spiked is carbonated water, alcohol from fermented cane sugar, and lime juice. In a traditional, let's say like a diet soda or a product like that, it would say, like you said, natural flavors. Like it's always very vague. And maybe that's why you keep saying flavor system, but the point of why I'm telling you this is it is very transparent what is in here, so anybody can be inspired and make their own, but to put natural flavors or essence of whatever, it's very vague and no one would ever replicate that. And the customer doesn't know what the hell that is. So I'm just curious, like, what it's like being so transparent with the product. And I'm going to drink this while I talk to you so I know exactly what I'm drinking.
Okay. It is the big beverage in this I guess in the categories of soda and beer, it have created a lot of confusion. And one of the first things we learned when we started talking to consumers is about this distrust. We don't know really what we're drinking. There's a lot of ingredients. I don't even know what half of them mean. And natural flavors is maybe the biggest violator of that. It is in every product we compete against, and yet there is no standard for natural flavors. It is 2,000 ingredients that are protected. They're not regulated by the FDA. They have no definition. You don't know what they are. And if you call a flavor house, they're not going to tell you. So, the best example that we heard was something like 60% of them are synthetic, like just literally cooked up in a lab and still called natural. So, it creates an incredibly confusing arena to then communicate this area, this distrust. And so, Blake, as you said, what we try to do is be like overly transparent, incredibly simple. As you see in the product you're drinking, basically the label is on the front of the package so that the consumer doesn't get confused. They know exactly what's in there because there it is called out in supersized font.
Right.
Almost as a little bit of tongue in cheek.
Right.
Let's sort of call out what is otherwise been, a really confusing experience for the consumer for a long time.
And also dangerous because, like, I think a lot of us growing up, in the 90s always wanted, we want to keep our weight down. And so we're eating all these foods that are verified by these big brands. And I just feel like even in 2022, there's still so much of it out there. It's pretty insane and consumers don't know. They think diet, they think fat-free, and all of us grew up on all of that marketing from the 80s and 90s. Like, you can still have what you want, but it won't affect your body. And it's a shame because, this tastes delicious. I'm going to open the mango. I just tried the lime. I think I'm going to have this at my barbecue coming up for my birthday in a week. But talk about like the food industry. It sounds like during the Obama administration when Michelle Obama, like there was some fighting against the soda industry because the soda, not trying to get kids away from soda. But it sounds like that's when you started getting into all of this.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I have four kids, and I don't, we're not a brand that goes out and sort of is out there on a crusade. It really is just what feels right to us. in 2022 to not really know what you're putting in your body is just seems sort of crazy to us. I mean, these categories, are enormous, and maybe some of these ingredients are fine. The part that I think was so hard for us to get our head around is this: how do you develop a relationship, a customer relationship with an individual when you're not really telling them what's in your brand? It felt really distrustful to us. It felt really kind of an affront to, and if we were ever going to have a relationship with our brand, like, we had to really be very upfront about it. And so I think what makes it particularly acute in the sparkling water space is that every other brand we compete against, all 125 brands, the only ingredient they have is natural flavors. And so like it was effectively even more confusing when you got into sparkling water, and you had to be even more kind of clear about what you stood for. So it is not a easy conversation to be part of. You say, well, they have natural flavors and we don't. Well, I don't know. Natural flavors, it must be okay. You said it was not. So it can be very confusing. We kind
What
of
does
do
that
our
even
things.
mean, natural? I mean, doesn't everything come from the earth at some point? Like,
Exactly. Well, and in the group that regulates these natural flavors is called FEMA, which is the Flavor and Extract Manufacturers Association, which is really all the people that make these flavors. So it's even more confusing when you think about, like, having that group as a regulatory board. And I'll kind of stop there. But from a consumer standpoint, it has made our lives quite challenging. But at the same time, I think we're the brand that's really opening people's eyes up to, like, what kind of a relationship you can have going forward, as long as you're being upfront. The consumers seem really excited about wanting to know more about what's in their products versus what they've consumed to date.
so everyone listening and watching this podcast, the goal really is to create loyalty with consumers. Some industries do that with membership-based subscriptions, or like RH, like restoration hardware, hotels. I mean, it is tough to create loyalty. A lot of them are doing that with these memberships. How would you do that when you have this added like layer basically between yourself and the customer? How do you create loyalty and build that relationship?
Well, I think we prioritized it really early and said we want to be a community-led brand. I mean, we have almost 800,000 community members today. Again, this drifter community. And what we've done is really prioritize them and said, it's our sales and bottom line and all these things. The drifter community is just as important, if not more important. And so what we do is we talk to them regularly. We bring them into the conversation. We effectively have bypassed the fact that we sell through a store to the consumer. We still work with our retail partners, and they're incredibly important. But what we've tried to do is create a one-on-one relationship too, so that when we put a product out into the world or create a new flavor, they have a chance to react, to tell us how they feel, and then we steer that energy to our retail partners. So it is, to me, the there's never going to be a time where listening to the consumer, falls out of fashion. I mean, it is so important to the success, especially in a category like this. People's tastes change so quickly; they're so fickle, and so a lot of what we do really is listen and encourage conversation as opposed to talk. Kind of have a one-way dialogue. It's incredible. It's a very much of a circle.
Absolutely. So, if you had one piece of advice to give to your younger self as you were starting out on your journey creating this company, trying to make it customer centric, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, I think uh, to be patient and start really with um, not going broad, but really being narrow and deep. I think part of what's so challenging right now in this omni-channel world of lots of different places to sell online and in stores is that can be confusing. But to me, this idea of a one-on-one relationship and developing a really strong bond with a small group is still the critical kind of component to any great brand. It's not, to have sort of a a broader audience that is less passionate. I think actually can really work against you, especially as these spaces get more competitive. So that's how I would. I think that never kind of falls out of fashion.
Absolutely. I think that is great advice. And it's very humble to focus, even if you have a small audience or community. And this advice is for anybody listening that you should focus on even a small group or community because they matter. And if you do a good job, they'll tell their friends. So you don't have to start out being the most famous or the biggest. You just have to focus on what's in front of you and what you have.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I
Yeah.
think more than ever, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So we're at the end of the podcast. I want to do some rapid fire and have a little fun, get to know you a little bit
Yes.
better. Bill, you ready to take some rapid fire questions?
Hit me. I'm
All right.
ready. I'll
Okay.
do my
So,
best.
I mean, this one might be a little too easy for you, but you're stuck on an island. You have water, but you can bring one other food and one other drink. What are they?
Spindrift is obviously the drink.
But which flavor, which kind?
I think probably the pineapple, which you have. I think if you haven't opened it, it's on your list
Yeah.
in the light
I'm gonna.
blue. That is magic, magic in a can.
Wow, that is delicious. Okay.
And I think I'd have to do chips and guac maybe to go with that, especially that flavor.
Okay, very
I'm a
cool.
huge guacamole fan.
Now that is really, really good, objectively. If you could have lunch with anybody dead or alive, who would it be?
I am I am an Abraham Lincoln uh, uh, sort of fan and follower, and I think he's pretty amazing. He had a particular style of leadership that I really liked, and obviously he did incredible things for our country. So I would have to say Abraham Lincoln.
All right. What is your most embarrassing work moment?
Something 7 years ago, we I got the team together and I told them we had to change our name to a different name from Spindrift because we had lost our trademark. So I got the whole company together at the time. There were maybe 20 of us. And I said, we're changing our name to to a different brand, a different name. And I brought them, and they looked at me like I had three heads, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But we began doing all the repackaging, and then fortunately we corrected the situation. And 2 months later, I brought them together and said, we're back on track. So I think that was probably my low point. Although I'm sure there are others out there that that they would remind me of.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you had $1 billion, what would you do with it first?
I am really nervous about global warming. I mean, I think we all are, but I would that from personal perspective, I lose sleep over. From a business perspective, and those are the things I would say that I'm the most concerned about. So I think I would put that money towards trying to come up with more creative solutions for solving that.
Okay, so what is one tool or resource you use during COVID to get through?
Podcasts. I love listening to other, not necessarily entrepreneurs or CEOs, but I think I'm really interested in the origin of just creativity, musicians, writers. I think I really like hearing like how people come up with different ideas and what the genesis of all of that is. So that was a big outlet for me.
All right, and what is the best music or band of all time?
Oh man, of all time, um, I'm a Pearl Jam fan. I I don't. It sounds like maybe we're around sort of grew up in the '80s and '90s, and that music was pretty amazing. Um, at a at the right time in my life, so I would have to say Pearl Jam.
Awesome. Well, it has been so fun and interesting having you on the show. And I'm now going to go back. I believe you were on How I Built This with Guy Raz. Is that right?
He was nice enough to have me on.
So now I'm going to go listen to that show with you. And for all of our listeners and viewers, if they want to pick up Spindrift or learn more about you, where can they do that?
Probably our website, Drink Spindrift, or on all of our social channels. We do a lot. Also, Drink Spindrift. We have a lot of fun content on there. It'll give you a really good deep dive into the business.
All right, Bill. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I love the drink. It's delicious. I was a fan of the non-alcoholic version, but I like the spiked version, and I'm going to get some for my barbecue birthday in late May. So thanks again. All of
Well,
you have been tuning into the Modern Customer Podcast. If you have a moment, please leave me an iTunes review so more people find this growing show. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.